Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the MF Lounge. This is an episode. Hey, I'm not supposed to have you in this yet. I'm popping you out. Shh. Uh, Welcome to the MF Lounge, where it's a break from that overall stress of life. If you are having a tough time at your job, like I've been having lately, if other things are stressing you out, you know what? Come hang out with us. We're just lounging here, just having a conversation. We're going to be talking with people in the industry, game-wise, either board gaming, role-playing, or video games. Just have a conversation about them and the stuff that they like, but maybe a little bit of gaming stuff in there too. So, as you saw last week, I still have my lounge light. The bar is still open, so if anybody wants to pull out a drink and have one with us, enjoy our little conversation here. This episode or video or stream or whatever, I have a good friend of ours. It is Sean Epperson from Thing 12 Games. Sean, good to see you again, sir.
Hello. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome. It seems like you're like all over the place. Like it's insane. Like, okay, so we go to Gen Con. It's the one thing that we could really go to. That's the big one. And you're not there. You're at like everything else, though. I'm like, oh, I'm at Rose City Comic Con or whatever that is. And you're like, oh, I'm at this and I'm at that. I mean, come on.
Gen Con is on our list to get to. That's for sure. We are going to be at PAX Unplugged. I'm going to be there with my Board Game Alliance crew. We're going to be at Dice Tower West. We're also going to... one of the big industry cons, and it's just escaping my mind right now. I can't even think of it right now. Wow, it's amazing.
You're so excited as left your being.
Can't think of the con name. Yeah, it's the one that like basically it's mostly for publishers and the local game stores and stuff like that are interested in distribution. Nice. So they're looking to see like what's new stuff that people are coming out with and all that kind of stuff. So we're actually going to be there, and we will have a booth, which is pretty crazy. So, yay!
That's awesome. And just to know for anyone watching live, if you want to comment, we actually have a cool thing here. We're streaming through a thing called StreamYard, which I'm really excited about. And if you comment in our comment section, I can actually bring it up for us. So if you have any questions or comments, let us know. I did a little thing where I got to show Sean, and I came up with this because I'm a child. So we'll tie that.
Well, it's appropriate. People that know me, that's what's up.
Yeah, on brand. So this is a question I just want to ask everybody first off when I talk to them or whatever. And what is something that's happened in your life that is like unique or like something super fun that maybe somebody that people that know you might not know about you?
I worked in an emergency room for about 6 years.
Oh,
that was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I got to learn all kinds of things and see things that would just blow people's minds.
Yeah.
It was amazing to be able to like help people when they're in those sort of emergency situations, because I worked at a trauma center. So it was, we saw kind of everything. We were the downtown trauma center. So we had, the drive-bys and people that would overdose and, people that were stuck living on the street and all that kind of stuff. But it really gave me a perspective on life, so that when people like later on in different jobs that I had, when people would freak out like, oh my God, this thing's on fire. Like, no, calm down. Literally no one's dying. I've been in life and death situations. We'll ride this out. It's cool. Just chill.
That's crazy. And what area was this?
This was in Yakima, Washington, in central Washington.
Yeah. Holy smokes. Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. Seems like it's funny because I feel like we're very similar in age, and yet I feel like you've had way more experiences than I have, and it makes me feel very small. So thank you. So I think a while back, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but you had posted about a video game that you had actually worked on.
Yeah.
So is that something you do currently, or is that something you had done in the past?
Past and currently.
Hmm.
So, Thing 12 isn't enough for us to do full time yet. So that's kind of like my nighttime gig, my side job. During the day, I'm a producer at a video game company, and I've been working as a producer for 20 years, give or take.
Yeah. So how did that start then? Where did you start before you got into producing?
Well, actually, I started off as a tester. I
Oh,
worked at
nice.
Electronic Arts. They had a studio in Seattle, and I was working on Need for Speed for the original PlayStation, dating myself. Uh,
Nice.
God, we worked on some other smaller titles that EA was, kind of kicking out.
Yeah.
FIFA 99 was another one we did. And I just kind of kept doing the testing thing for a while. Eventually, it wasn't enough. I needed more. And
Hmm.
so I was kind of ready to move up into more leadership positions. And there was a company called Kryptonite Games over in the Seattle area. And Kryptonite made handheld games for the Nintendo GBA and the DS. And I got a job as an associate producer. So my first producer gig,
Nice.
working in handheld stuff. And it was a blast. I loved it because it really laid into my strengths. So basically, like, I got to work with really talented people and help drive the success and the vision of games, but also just be there to like help people. Like, the job of a good producer is to not necessarily know everything and not necessarily be able to do anything, but be there to remove roadblocks for people. So make everyone's job easier to do. And that's kind of a good thing of mine. So, you're evaluating things. You're always like looking around, like, hey, how can I, do some crazy thing to help someone out? Like, I've gotten groceries for people before. I've done babysitting. I've had to go pick up people's clothes from, because they were working on something, like, oh, I need to pick this up. I'm like, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. You do your thing. We're all good. So you wear a lot of hats if you're a good producer. And yeah, so I've just been doing that and had a lot of really good success and met lots of great people, and they loved working with me. And that's kind of how I got into where I'm at currently. We're working on some really cool stuff with SNK, doing some Samurai Showdown stuff, which is awesome.
Nice. Oh, take a sniff. I love some of the things they said, and you're like, what? That makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. So what are some of the games that you've worked on that if people have played games throughout the years, would be like, oh my god, I can't believe you actually worked on that?
Gosh. I think my personal favorites, we did Looney Tunes Cartoon Conductor for the Nintendo DS, and I got to work with Warner Brothers. I actually went down to the Warner
Wow.
Brothers studio and got to watch all the guys that do all the voices for all those characters. Joe Walaski, who did Bugs Bunny right before or right after Mel Blanc passed. He did Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny, and then just a bunch of other like classic guys that did all this stuff. And it was really cool because the game that we made, it was a rhythm-based game, but the characters interact with you. But the characters would do these classic lines from all the cartoons that like I had grown up with, and the voice actors all remembered. It was all their favorite stuff, and they were so excited to be able to do their favorite lines that they remember. Like, oh my god, I get a chance to actually do these lines that inspired me to be the voice of this character. So, it was awesome to work on. It was cool for them. Oh, man, it was such an amazing time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was so much fun. We also did another top one of mine is the Legend of Spyro: The Eternal Night
Oh, nice.
for the Game Boy Advance. So Spyro was a really cool franchise. Definitely grew up with that. When I was gaming on the PlayStation and whatnot. This was a chance for a team to really go above and beyond. We were the bottom SKU. Like, there was a DS SKU, there was a console SKU across different consoles. So usually the bottom SKU kind of gets forgotten about. Nobody really pays attention to it. Like, yeah, we need this, but we're not going to worry about it, and
Yeah.
we just went to town on it. I had all these amazing people that were working on it, like the artist and the lead artist and the main programmer were just insanely talented people. There was one night we were working on the game, and they decided to have a contest. The artist was going to animate some fish, like create some animated fish. Everything's 2D, so he was going to draw and animate these fish in this scene. Not something we planned for, not something that we'd budgeted for. Just they wanted to do it. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Let's see where this goes. The programmer was like, well, I can program these fish to move around in a little pattern in this water area before you can get the art done. He's like, no, I'll get the art done before you get the programming done. So I'm overhearing this back and forth between the two of them challenging each other. I'm like, sweet, they're having fun. We're adding more cool, little things into the game. That's great. And everybody that was on that just, had such a blast. It ended up getting a Metacritic of like 9.5. And people called it the swan song for the GBA, because it was like one of the last titles on the platform. And because they called it Spyro May Cry, because it played a lot like Devil May Cry, where you had these special combos you could do, and just this crazy control mechanism, and it blew everyone's expectations out of the water. That was a really good fun one to work on. And I've seen people every now and then, pop up like, oh, I remember playing this game, when I was younger. I'm like, that's so cool. You still remember it. That's awesome.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about video games. I don't know. It's got a lot of good. I don't know, like I don't know what the word kind of what you're talking about, like with, just remembering back on some of the older stuff and like really appreciating it for what it was, and seeing how people like, some people would be like, well, I really like that. And some people like, I don't remember this game at all. Like, and you're like, oh, you never played it. This game was awesome. It's cool to see people's reactions to older stuff, and, seeing like some of the older stuff now is becoming, redone and stuff like that. And, it's crazy, because to think that I feel like with video games, there wasn't a lot of that before. And now it's like, that's a big thing now. That's just kind of a resurgence of remaking old games.
Yeah. And I think it's just because the audience that is now making stuff is remembering those, and there's a strong interest in like, yeah, I want to work on that franchise that I grew up with. Right? Mm-hmm. I worked on the original Xbox before it was a thing, before it launched. Mm-hmm. I got to work on the original hardware for that. And the title I was working on was okay. A title called Nightcaster. Didn't do super well sales-wise, but we also had access to all of the other Xbox builds. Nice. So what we would do is in the evening when we got done working, we'd download Halo builds, and we'd sit around and play multiplayer Halo together. And, before it was like a launch title, like we were already having tons of fun. Like, this game is just going to destroy.
Yeah.
And sure enough. Yeah. Here we go.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love that. So what you kind of talked about it. So talk a little bit more in detail about what a producer really does. Are you just kind of letting everybody, you just kind of said, but like, what kind of technical stuff do you get into? It can't just be like, okay, well, you do this and you do that or whatever. There's got to be more to it.
Oh yeah, for sure. It depends. There's a lot of different levels of producer. I mean, depending on the size of the team. So most of the teams that I've been with, I'm the sole producer of the team. Which means that what I'm doing is a lot of the scheduling stuff, working with the lead, like the dev lead and the art lead, and then the design lead, and talking about all the different things that we have to do to make the game, and making sure that everybody is, no matter how far you are in your careers, like as a designer or artist, you're always going to underestimate what your times are for things. So, when people go, oh, it'll take me 2 weeks to do this, right? I'm going to give you 3.5, 4 weeks to do that. And then balancing out the overall vision of the game, where you have to make cuts, what things you need to actually kind of put a little extra time on. thinking about polish time and testing, and you're working with all the different disciplines that come together to make the game, and keeping everyone engaged and excited about what they're doing. If you have to do overtime, making sure that people are taken care of, getting food ordered. Um, you're meeting with if you're on the development side, sometimes you're meeting with publishers. So, talking with people that are actually paying the bills to make the game. Or if you're on the publishing side, you're actually working with people that are doing it and trying to find out, where's the project at? Is it late? Is it early? What kind of things do we need to do to keep it on track or to get it back on track? It's a lot of communication. Communication is the top number one skill to have, because you got to keep everything all linked together and make sure everybody knows what's going on, and the things that they know, the things that they need to know, and they don't know the things that they don't need to know, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
As a producer, you're sort of you're kind of a gate.
Yeah.
So there's lots of information coming through, and not all of it needs to go back to the team because it can distract them and get people worried or unnecessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa. Sometimes the team is, grumpy about something, and the other side of that wall doesn't need to know about that either. So you're just kind of keeping that back, like, well, I'm handling this problem. They don't need to know about it until it starts to become something that I need to bring them in on. So evaluating that communication and keeping people abreast of what they need to know.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, as working as a video in the video game industry and stuff like that, was there somebody like, one person or a group of people that you ran into over your time, through your time doing this, and you were just like, wow, I can't believe I get to meet this person?
Oh, geez. I think I've worked with people at, Electronic Arts and Microsoft. I never had a Bill Gates run in.
Mm-hmm.
But I've met with some top people from Marvel. That was really cool, getting access to like the entire Marvel library because of the game we were working on. Like,
Nice.
here's the golden key to access everything. Like, holy crap! Every single digital version of every comic Marvel's ever made is at our fingertips. Like, oh my god, get in the candy store. And just like, I don't know, some of the artists that we've worked with, the audio talent, like we worked on Looney Tunes, getting to meet all those people and hang out at the Warner Brothers studio a lot. Like, that was super cool.
Yeah.
You do run into a lot of interesting people. Sometimes, like, oh god, I worked on a title called Motor City that Electronic Arts put out, and it was basically a classic car online role-playing game. So you would drive and compete in these races, earn money, and get to buy new cars and parts and all that kind of stuff. And I get to go around and basically do audio recordings and talk to people that owned all these like amazing classic cars and get pictures lined up and that sort of thing. So that was really cool. Like, being a producer in the video game industry opens a lot of doors into a lot of interesting aspects that you may not really think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, since you were talking about Marvel, this is something I actually wanted to talk to you about, just because I was thinking about it today. I got my X-Men shirt on, but like, so growing up, it sounds like you were pretty big into comic books. So where did you lean? What side did you lean on?
I lean primarily Marvel.
Okay.
That's where I think the bulk of my interest was. I read a lot of later in the late teens, high school years, I was reading some of the more kind of obscure stuff, like, at the time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Grimjack, and a lot of really weird animal-based comics those were really big.
Yeah.
Anything that looked, interesting, but the vast bulk of my collection was all Marvel.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because I was just thinking about that the other day about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because like back when they first started, it was just, the comic books were just so odd, but they were so wonderfully odd. I remember, I think it was like a series of books that they had that was a single story where like Shredder had made some clones or something like that, and they were all like grotesquely made. Like one of them was too tall, one of them was really short. Like just some of the ways that comic book went, it was like weirdly amazing, and yet it didn't last as long as I had kind of hoped it would, and I wish that more comics would do that. I'm sure there are some out there that I don't know about, but it's interesting that where Eastman and Laird actually took that.
Yeah, when those came out, there was really just two comic producers, right? There was Marvel and DC. There were people that kept trying to make inroads, and there was always like Fantagraphics and like the really weird offshoot stuff, sometimes related to drug related comics or whatever. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles really opened the door for the smaller publisher, the guy that had some kind of interesting and cool idea that Marvel wasn't going to touch and DC wasn't going to touch, and proved like, hey, there's some room in here for people with interesting ideas and cool art and to bring something new to the world.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So speaking upon Marvel, like what were the big comics that you were into? What were the big characters that you were into back in the day?
Spidey for sure. I loved the sarcasm that he would bring. His books were always just so much fun to read, and eventually the black suit stuff was always really cool before it became Venom. Just, that weird symbiote thing. Why is his suit black? And I also read a lot of X-Men. Of course, Wolverine. I think most teen boys are probably like fans of Wolverine. It's a guy with claws. Oh, it's so cool. Deadpool wasn't the thing at that time. This was like in the 80s and early 90s. So I was a big fan of the mutants and big fan of Spidey stuff. Some Avengers and some Cap and whatnot. But the two things that drove me to Spidey were, that the guy that would often get, his butt kicked, but, kept coming at it with this positive can-do attitude and this snarky sort of like comebacks that he was always delivered to keep the the bad guys kind of overly angry so they wouldn't be thinking straight. And then on the mutant side, it was the people that were kind of downtrodden, the kicked around and looked down upon, but they're gonna persevere through that and try and change the minds of people by still keeping their ideals. Like, we're going to be a positive force for change and not the dark force of change.
Yeah I think that's what drove me to mostly read X-Men comics, because it was just like one of those things that was like everybody was always trying to keep them down, and they're like, just this, we're not going to have it. Just because we're a little different than you doesn't mean we all can't we can't all come together and live together. I love that concept, and I don't know, just for Chris Claremont to come up with that concept and just to keep it going throughout the years it's a great message for kids back then.
Well, there's a strong parable of the whole, like, the ideas of racism and sexism and things like that are mixed into that. And it's maybe not super obvious to a younger audience, but then as you get older, you can start to like kind of make those connections. And I was definitely seeing that as I was reading them, and they'd be sometimes a little more overt about it when they were really trying to like hammer home that just because someone's a different skin color doesn't mean that they're evil or that they're bad. They look different, and that's all it really is. And I think that's a positive thing. I think it's kind of message that kids do need to continue to hear.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope that as these the Marvel universe gets big and they're doing all these movies and they're going to start to introduce the X-Men into this world, hopefully that is like a prevalent big thing about it. Just really focus on that, because I think now more than ever we need that. So
yeah, I think the way Marvel's approached their stuff in their movies, it wouldn't surprise me that happens, because I mean, the thing that I also liked about Marvel characters was that they had a realness to them. They had clay feet, that they always had downsides. They weren't just perfect beings. They weren't gods. They were mortal people with failures and flaws. And At one time, Iron Man had a drinking problem. He was an alcoholic, and that
Yeah.
was something they confronted in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was a really fascinating way to really make these characters feel fleshed out and real, and really interesting to read, and take the stories in creative ways. And you kind of see that a little bit in the Marvel movies,
Mm-hmm.
where like Captain America and Iron Man, like kind of fighting it out. Like they're in complete disagreement on how to do things. And it's because of those mortal, failures on either sides, pride or fear and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I remember back in the 80s too that, there was the comic books were big, but also like they had this big thing where like people were like, comic books, they're for kids, there has nothing to do with real life and blah, blah, blah. And just some of the stories that they had, like if you look in between the lines, like there were just so many good messages there. And, and it's unfortunate that, so many people were like, this is silly or this is stupid.
Yeah. It's definitely, I think there were certain comics that stood out, obviously the Watchmen, Sandman, that came a little bit later, that showed people like, no, comics are literature.
Mm-hmm.
They can bring some really enriching and fascinating stories to tell that can be at an adult level. That's not just kiddie comics, Donald Duck and whatever, there are some really deep emotional stories that are being told.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the X-Men, like the original Dark Phoenix story, like that was a really emotional story. And
it was
how it ended. You're like, oh my
mm-hmm.
God.
Yeah, exactly. I will admit I am meant to crying when I read the end of that. I am not ashamed. I was very sad, and I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. For all you younger folk that's not watching, so going into like, and I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, but I want to get a little bit more into gaming and stuff like that. Like, so, you starting up your own board game company, you probably dabbled in some board games here and there. You've had some, a lot of background in the old video game design. So you're like, well, why can't I make this into, board game stuff? And obviously when you are a board game publisher, if you're not Stonemaier Games, if you're not, Portal Games, it's taking you a bit, so, what made you think, this is something I'm going to get into and, it's probably not going to be so lucrative right away?
I knew from the get-go that I wasn't going to be super lucrative out the door. That wasn't the driving impetus. It was more of a creative need. And I think anyone that makes art, whether it's a writer, if you create songs, if you are a painter, if you like to draw, like you do those things because you're compelled to. There's something inside of you that gets into your brain and it's like, this needs to come out, this needs to exist, and it just claws at you until you bring it out. And I was running into that. On the video game side, I was super excited to be bringing these games that we were working on to light. But there was always a part of me that was like, I've got some things that I really want to bring to the world, but I don't have the money to afford a team of engineers and, artists and sound people and, all the other expenditures that kind of go in. Especially at the time, there was just no tool set for being an indie, game creator.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a programmer. I couldn't write a lick of code. I can do a little scripting, but that's about it. So board games basically gave me that avenue. I could actually okay, I can create the things that I need, do some stick figure drawings on the cards, whatever, and see if the ideas in my head that seem to be interesting and different are actually fun or not. And turns out they kind of were. So I was able to kind of keep pushing that ball forward. And with the aid of my financial partner, Sean Harold, we're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's, make this a thing. We can work together and use our different strengths to try and, do this and see what happens with it. If we grow it into something big, that's awesome. If it's just something we do on the side and we're able to make cool things with all of our friends, that's fun too. Like we love it. It's a passion, and getting to see people enjoying the things that you make is incredibly rewarding. I mean, we like, seeing things be profitable, of course, but more than that, when we're at a convention and we're demoing a game with someone, and you see like their eyes lighting up as they're kind of like really getting into the game, and they're excited, and they're like laughing and having fun, and just like that's something that I helped bring to them. I was able to make something that enriched their life, and that even for these 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, that's such an incredible feeling. I demoed Seals of Cthulhu for a guy at PAX, and after he got done, he started to walk away, and he turned around, he's like, I'm continuing to think about this game, like how I could do better, and the ways that things interacted together. I'm like, that's exactly what I want people to do. Like if they get destroyed or whatever, but they see all these, like how the strings connect and how can I do this? Like my game caused them to get kind of excited mentally, and how could they do better, and thinking about different strategies. Like that's awesome. I was able to put people in this positive space, and that's really what drives this.
Of course, I forget to unmute my microphone. That's awesome. I love that, when the fact that you get those reactions, that's cool. So which one is your baby then? I know it probably is the first one you made, but like what's the game that every time you see it, you're like, well, that one's my baby. That's the one I'm the most proud of.
Gosh, like who's your favorite kid, right?
That's right.
So Seals of Cthulhu and Click Click Boom were my designs. Dice of Crowns, Dice of Pirates were brought in from Badger, and I worked with him on those. Dice of Crowns still holds a special place in my heart. It was Badger's original design, and we gave him full credit as designer. I worked with him on it to really kind of flesh it out, but that was his creation. But the thing that I love about it is that it's one that I can super quickly get people playing, because it's so compact. I can take it, throw it in my pocket or whatever, and I see someone, kind of like we're just hanging out together, like, want to play a game, and just like, hey, roll these dice, and within a minute they're playing, and I can stick a dagger at this guy, cool, here, have a dagger. That's just super fun. So that's always going to hold a special place in my heart.
Nice. That's awesome. And Tracy says hi. I'm going to put
Hello,
that up on the screen. She's putting up with me. She wants to listen to you, but she's putting up with me. So I want to ask you a few things that I actually don't get to ask you when I talk to you, because we're always talking shop. So what is your favorite game of all time?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there you go. Pick that out of the 3,000 you have.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. It's really hard to say, because I play so many different games. The one downside is that I don't get to play certain games a whole lot.
Yeah.
I really like the others, the Seven Sins.
Nice.
Culminating or Not, designed by Eric Lang. It's one I don't get to play a whole ton, but I did get to play through all of the content with my team that I was working with during one of my day jobs. And that I love one versus many games, because I often feel like I'm the guy that's going to stir the pot, and people are going to come after me just because I'm doing that. So in a one versus many game, I can do that, and the game encourages it, and encourages them to come at me. And the others really balances it out, so that the person that's the one can just go for the jugular. Like you have to lean on the players and just try and beat them into submission. And the players have to do the same thing if they want to try and win. So it's really contentious. And I've always liked that really gothic, kind of dark, I don't know, almost a Catholic sort of, horror story look that has. And that one's one if someone wants to play it, I'm like, yeah, let's play. What sin do I want to play here?
That's awesome. So here's another one for you then. So what's one of your most underrated games that you have that you think doesn't this get enough love that you really like?
There's probably two different games. The first would be Citrus. It's always my go-to for people. It looks boring as sin when you look at the box. Worst box art ever. The box art is a lady that's pulling a citrus fruit off a tree. I think she's pulling an orange off a tree into a basket. Doesn't that sound exciting? But the gameplay is just brutal. It's so vicious because you're trying to manage this economic system, and you're also like placing out these really multicolored tiles, which are all like kind of linking back to the different types of citrus trees. So you're growing this giant orchard out, and you're really screwing people out of points, deciding on when to trigger certain point scoring mechanisms in the game. And that super knife fighty, like, well, if I do it now, that's going to make sure that this person doesn't get any points at all, because only 2 people can score on a spot, and if 3 or 4 people are linked to it, they get nothing. Only the top 2 win. So it's so mean and so vicious. And when people start playing it, they're like, "Oh my god, this game's mean!" I'm like, yeah, it doesn't look like it. It's so fun. So
that's awesome.
Definitely.
That's funny too, because after our last conversation, I think you were on a random conversation with us and with John from Legends, and we got the game at Gen Con. And we're excited. We haven't played it yet, but I'm excited to play it with Tracy just to see how. Because man, when we play competitive games that are brutal like that, it gets a little dicey. So
the other that I always like to use as my go-to is Vanuatu. Vanuatu was done by the second release of Vanuatu was by Quind Games. It was a Kickstarter. I've got both copies, both versions, because why not? Vanuatu, again, you look at the box and it looks like a survival game, because it's got this island scene. There's nobody present. There's a boat, and it's on beached on the beach there, and kind of this passive little water scene. Doesn't look super exciting. And then you look at the game, like the board with all these tiles laid out, and the tiles are really pretty. They've got these kind of curved look to them, these water tiles that you're placing out. You're actually building out the ocean. Looks gorgeous. I mean, it looks super peaceful, looks super pretty, and it's even meaner than Citrus. It is one of the most vicious, just cutthroat games I've ever played.
So no wonder you and John are friends. You just like those games that are just like, you know what, I'm just going to be mean and just destroy everyone. This is going to be fun.
Exactly. So Vanuatu is the theme is basically island life. So you're a group of islanders out in the islands of Vanuatu, which is an actual place. And what you're doing is you're bringing in people that are vacationers, and kind of showing them around. You are collecting fish. You're collecting treasures from the ocean. You're building huts. You're selling fish at the market in order to get currency to be able to do different things. But all of that is based around this action selection system. And in the action selection system, each player has 3 discs. Now you have 2 times that you can place your discs out. So you have 1 round and everybody does it, and then second round everybody does it. What you're doing is you're selecting what actions you want to take. So let's say that I place 1 disc out at fishing, and then you come along and you place 2 discs out at fishing. When it comes around to us actually doing things, well, only the person that has the most at that spot gets to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you place 1 disc out at, at building huts, and then I place 2 discs out at selling something at the market. So when it comes to my turn, if I don't do the market, let's say for some reason, I have to do something else. I have to take my discs back from one spot, and I can only do the action if I have the majority. So you can totally screw people out of doing things where it's like, guess what you're doing this turn? Nothing, because you don't have majority.
Nice.
It's so the best spots. It's weird. The second best spot is to be first because you're getting to actually place your things out.
Yeah.
But people see where people are going, or like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go screw Sean out of this, out of this spot. Maybe I'll put 2 down, and the next one I'll put 3, my third one down to guarantee one thing. But actually, the best spot to have is going last, because then you don't necessarily get to choose what you want to do, but you can guarantee that you're going to get to do something.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't choose last place. Like, you can choose first. That's that's one of the things that you can get in the game is the first place token. But you can't. But the best one is last. So you're like, I really want this person over here to go get that, so I could go last. So it's so mean. It's so vicious. You really have to watch, where you're putting things out, what things you want to try and do, because you can get screwed left and right. So
sounds like it. How do you spell that for the people that won't know how to look that up?
Yes, if you're looking for Vanuatu, it's Vanuatu.
Nice. Wow, that sounds awesome. Yeah, what's funny is I don't think we have enough games that are brutal like that. I feel like most of them are pretty easy to play. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some games where if you want to be cruel, you can definitely be cruel. But I like games that kind of take it to that next level. It's like, you know what, you're gonna have to make those decisions.
Exactly. Well, and it creates fun interactions between people as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. So we're getting towards the end here, but one thing I wanted to discuss with you that I'd like to talk with everybody about too. This being the second one we've done, but anyway, I want to make it a thing just because I am really in love with music, and I want to know kind of what are you listening to these days? What is something that you're something that's either right now and that you're really loving, or that's something that's your favorite that you always go to?
For music?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to list 2 things. I have a problem giving one thing, clearly.
I think a lot of people do.
Tool is by far always my go-to band.
Nice.
Their music is very layered, and there's just lots of thought and emotion and technical prowess that is present in all of their songs. It's just an incredible band, and their tones are very kind of run the gamut between really hard pounding, like, yeah, let's just do this, to more melodic, sort of let's just chill out and kind of ponder the galaxy, sort of songs.
Yeah, so it's hard and spiritual at the same time. It's very interesting.
The second would be Ghost. Ghost is so silly and so funny, and when people first hear their songs or kind of find out about them, they sound like the most evil Satanists in the world, right? Like, all their songs are about the devil and just evil stuff. But their songs are super catchy. It's almost kind of pop rock, and you'll find yourself kind of singing their songs, kind of jamming out. Like, wait, what was I just doing? I'm singing Ghosts. That's what I'm doing. And the cool thing is they don't take themselves seriously at all. Whenever they do, they've kind of got this rock opera for all of the themes of their albums, and they do these videos that tell a little bit of the story in between each of the albums. And if you watch those, you're like, oh yeah, these guys aren't taking this serious at all. They're just, it's really tongue-in-cheek and really we're just gonna have fun. I got to actually go to one of their concerts recently, and it was an absolute blast. They were having a lot of fun with the audience, really engaging people, and just having being funny and silly about it, and just having fun.
That's awesome.
And that's a really infectious kind of music that's got kind of a cool, catchy groove, and sort of a kind of a darker lyrics, which is kind of fun. But yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny because you don't see enough bands that kind of do that thing, that kind of, do that tongue in cheek, don't take themselves seriously. It kind of reminds me of like The Darkness. They're
Yeah,
like,
oh, yeah.
a lot of their songs are just about like, like trying to, idolize that old 80s, like, heavy metal where it's like, okay, girls, guns, drugs, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, really, they're just, making a scene of it. And, it's a lot of fun. And, these days, this kind of climate, it's nice to have some fun,
Yeah.
something to kind of take our minds off of stuff. So that's awesome. What's one of your favorite concerts that you've ever been to besides Ghost?
Without a doubt, Gwar. A Gwar concert is a concert like no other.
Talking about not taking yourself seriously,
right? So for those that don't know, Gwar is a metal band. All of the players in the band dress up in these crazy outfits. They all look like Warhammer 40K characters, with just spikes everywhere and fleshy bits everywhere. They look kind of like monsters. They've got masks on that are all just insane looking. And with all this like crazy stuff hanging off their bodies, they managed to play music and do it fairly well, actually. And it's just over the top, super violent, and kind of disgusting if you're, to be blunt about some of the lyrics of their songs. But they don't take themselves seriously at all. And their concerts, so you go there, if you're in the pit or anywhere like kind of near the pit, you're going to get messy. Like they'll do things like, bring these giant characters out on stage, and like cut their heads off and that spurt blood out into the crowd, which is just weird liquid that's, been colored and dyed and all that kind of stuff. They'll, one times I went to their concert, they had this thing called a crapapult. So it was a catapult filled with crap. It was just oatmeal and all this other goo. And they would fling it out into the crowd. It would just splat into people. You just grab some and you chuck some at someone else. It's a complete spectacle. It's like nothing you'll ever experience with any other band.
That's awesome. Too funny. Yeah, I like that, when you go somewhere and you pay the money and you want to have that experience, that you get that, it's so easy for people to just kind of go through the motions or whatever, but it's awesome to have those experiences that, kind of stick with you. That's awesome. I love it. All right. Well, I think we've had a pretty good conversation here. Thank you to Sean for coming on and talking to us again. It's always fun to kind of have a conversation, and now I actually get to know you a little bit more and know a little bit about the craziness behind the crazy man.
Explains a little bit about me.
That's true. But you're always one of our favorites, and we enjoy having you on. So
thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. So join us next week. We're actually going to be recording about at the same time next week. It's going to be Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, where I talk to Taylor LaBreche from Riverhouse Games. So if you need a little bit of a relaxing time, you want to sit back and just have a little listen to a little conversation, join us next time on the MF Lounge. And
sweet. Thanks
for watching. See ya.